The phone rang at 11:30 p.m. on December 22nd, jolting me awake in my Denver apartment. Sarah's voice cracked through the speaker panic, threading every word she spoke to me. Our family Christmas had been moved, she explained breathlessly, to some remote mountain lodge in Wyoming because Mom and Dad wanted to surprise us with a special anniversary celebration. 500 miles away. Tomorrow night. I hung up feeling confused and hurt, but I packed my bags anyway because family comes first, even when nothing makes sense. The snowstorm made driving treacherous, but I pushed through whiteout conditions for 8 grueling hours. Pine Ridge Lodge sat dark and abandoned when I arrived, my headlights cutting through swirling snow to illuminate empty windows and a deserted parking lot. Standing in that freezing parking lot, I dialed Jake's number with numb fingers, while wind howled through the pine trees surrounding me. My breath formed white clouds as I waited for him to answer, and when he did, laughter exploded from my phone speaker. Before he even said hello, the sound hit me like a physical blow to my chest. "Yeah, I lied," Jake said between chuckles, his voice carrying that familiar edge of cruelty I remembered from childhood. "There's this girl Madison who likes you. Met her at my barbecue last summer. Remember? She kept asking about you after you left, wanting to know if you were single if you'd call her. Didn't want you showing up tonight and stealing my thunder, so I figured I'd send you on a little wild goose chase." The words settled over me like ice water. My own brother had orchestrated this elaborate deception out of jealousy over some woman I barely remembered meeting. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated that my mind couldn't process it immediately. "Come on, Brenton, don't be such a baby about it," Jake continued, his tone shifting to mock concern. "You can drive back tomorrow. We're having a great time without you anyway." I ended the call without saying a word and stood there shaking, the whether from cold or rage I couldn't tell. My phone buzzed with notification after notification, and I realized I'd been ignoring emails all day while focused on driving. When I opened my inbox, my blood turned to ice. Confirmation after confirmation filled my screen. Pine Ridge Lodge event booking confirmed under my name. Premium catering services for 75 guests confirmed. Professional bartending staff confirmed. Transportation services for guest shuttles confirmed. Floral arrangements and decorations confirmed. Live acoustic entertainment confirmed. Every single email bore my name and what appeared to be my electronic signature. The numbers made my head spin. Lodge rental for 3 days, $8,500. Catering with open bar, $18,000. Professional staff and entertainment, $12,000. Transportation and miscellaneous services, $8,000. The total exceeded $47,000, all charged to credit cards I'd never authorized. Car headlights suddenly swept across the parking lot, and I looked up to see a white SUV pulling alongside the lodge's main entrance. A woman in her 50s climbed out wearing a professional winter coat and carrying a large set of keys. She walked directly toward me with the confident stride of someone who belonged here. "You must be Brenton," she called out, extending her hand as she approached. "I'm Patricia Wells' lodge owner. Sorry I'm running behind schedule. Your assistant Monica said you wanted everything perfect for tonight's celebration, so I came personally to make sure the setup meets your expectations." I stared at her, my confusion deepening with every word. "My assistant?" Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "Monica Williams from your consulting company. She's been coordinating with my staff for 3 weeks now. Lovely woman, very detail-oriented. She told us this was a critical corporate retreat for your biggest clients." "I don't have an assistant named Monica," I said slowly, "and I don't own a consulting company." The color drained from Patricia's face. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts, then showed me the screen. There was Monica Williams listed with a professional email address that included my real home address in Denver. The profile picture showed a young woman with auburn hair and green eyes that I'd never seen before in my life. She sent us a signed contract 3 weeks ago, Patricia said, her voice becoming urgent. Paid a deposit of $15,000 via wire transfer. She said you were bringing 75 executives from major corporations across Colorado for a team-building weekend. Patricia unlocked the lodge and led me inside while she pulled up the digital contract on her tablet. The signature at the bottom looked exactly like mine, but I knew I'd never signed anything. The fake consulting company letterhead used my real address and phone number, listing me as Chief Executive Officer of Mountain Peak Strategic Solutions. Monica told us you were very particular about privacy. Patricia continued, showing me email after email of detailed coordination. She said you preferred to handle all communication through her because you were closing several major deals and couldn't be disturbed. Every email was professionally written and incredibly detailed. Monica had requested specific menu items, coordinated transportation schedules, arranged for additional security, and even specified the types of flowers for centerpieces. The level of planning involved was staggering, and whoever Monica really was, she clearly knew enough about my personal information to forge convincing documents. "When is this event supposed to start?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Patricia checked her watch. "In exactly 2 hours. The catering truck should arrive any minute, and the entertainment crew is driving up from Cheyenne. Monica said you'd be here by 9 p.m. to do a final walkthrough." My phone rang again, and I saw Jake's name on the screen. I answered with shaking hands. "Brenton, where are you?" Jake asked, and I could hear party noise in the background. "Madison's here at our real Christmas party, and she's asking about you. I'm starting to feel bad about the whole Wyoming thing." "Someone," I said quietly, "someone has booked a $47,000 event in my name at this lodge. Tonight. Using forged documents and stolen credit card information." The line went silent except for the sound of Christmas music and laughter from whatever party they were actually having. Then Jake's voice came back smaller and more serious than before. "What are you talking about?" I looked at Patricia, who was watching me with growing concern, and realized that whatever was happening here went far beyond a cruel prank between brothers. Someone had been planning this for weeks, using my identity for purposes I couldn't even begin to understand. Patricia immediately offered to call the police, but I asked her to wait while I tried to understand the scope of what was happening. She led me to her office behind the lodge's reception desk and pulled up Monica's complete file on her computer. What I found there made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The email correspondence between Monica and Patricia spanned nearly a month. Monica had requested detailed floor plans of the lodge employee schedule's security protocols, and even information about local law enforcement response times. She'd claimed these requests were standard corporate security requirements, but reading them now, they looked more like someone gathering intelligence for something far more sinister than a business retreat. She paid everything in advance, Patricia explained, showing me the financial records. "Wire transfers from an account listed under your consulting company name. The bank routing information all checked out when we verified it." I studied the bank details and felt my stomach drop. The routing number belonged to First Mountain Credit Union in Denver, where my father worked as overnight security. Dad had been with the credit union for 15 years, and I'd banked there myself since college. Whoever Monica was, she had inside knowledge of my family's financial institutions. Patricia pulled up the security footage from her office, fast-forwarding through weeks of recordings until she found Monica's visit. The woman on screen was petite, with auburn hair and green eyes, just like the profile picture, but something about her posture and mannerisms seemed familiar. "Can you replay that section?" I asked, leaning closer to the monitor. As Patricia rewound the footage, I watched Monica's gestures and the way she tilted her head when asking questions. Recognition hit me like a physical blow. "That's my cousin Rachel," I whispered. Patricia paused the video. "Your cousin..." Rachel worked in accounting at my uncle's financial services firm in Denver. She'd always been quiet and reserved at family gatherings, but she was also incredibly intelligent, and had access to detailed financial information about our entire extended family. If anyone could forge documents and create convincing corporate identities, it would be Rachel. I called her cell phone immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I tried her work number and got the same result. Finally, I called my uncle's firm directly and spoke to the after-hours answering service. Rachel Harrison requested emergency family leave starting December 20th, the operator told me. She said there was a medical situation requiring her immediate attention. Do you know where she went? I'm sorry, sir, but I can't release that information to anyone other than immediate family members. I hung up and turned to Patricia. Rachel took emergency leave starting 3 days ago, right around the time I would have needed to drive here to make tonight's event. Why would your cousin use your identity to book an event she's not planning to attend? Patricia asked. Before I could answer, her phone rang. She listened for a moment, then hung up with a puzzled expression. That was my catering coordinator. The deposit check for tonight's food service bounced. The bank says the account was closed this morning. We stared at each other as the implications sank in. Someone had carefully planned to leave me holding the bill for an enormous event, while they disappeared with whatever they'd really been planning to accomplish here. I drove to the small town of Pine Ridge, following Patricia's directions to the only rental cabin complex within 20 miles of the lodge. The manager, an elderly man named Bob, was reluctant to give me information until I explained that I was looking for my cousin who might be in danger. Young woman with reddish hair rented cabin 12 3 days ago, Bob said, checking his ledger. Paid cash for a week, said she was writing a novel and needed absolute solitude. Cabin 12 sat at the end of a winding dirt road surrounded by dense pine forests. Rachel's rental car was parked outside, covered in snow. I knocked on the door and waited, my heart pounding as footsteps approached from inside. When the door opened, Rachel's face went white. She was wearing pajamas and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red-rimmed and filled with guilt that confirmed everything I'd suspected. "Brenton," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Monica." She collapsed into a chair by the fireplace and started crying. The story that poured out of her was more heartbreaking and complicated than I'd imagined. Our family was broke. Completely, devastatingly broke. Dad's gambling addiction had started small 3 years ago with office football pools and occasional casino trips, but it spiraled out of control when he discovered online poker and sports betting apps. He'd borrowed against his pension, taken cash advances on every credit card, and even stolen money from the family emergency fund Mom thought was safely hidden. The house was in foreclosure. Mom's medical bills from her diabetes treatment were overwhelming their insurance coverage. Jake had lost his job 2 months ago but hadn't told anyone because he was too ashamed. Sarah's husband had left her with 3 kids and massive debt from his failed restaurant venture. Uncle Gary gave me access to the family financial records when Dad asked him to help negotiate with creditors. Rachel sobbed. "I've been trying to find legal ways to help everyone for months, but there's nothing left to save. We're going to lose everything." The insurance fraud plan had been Jake's idea, she explained. They would create a fake corporate event, book everything legitimately, then claim damages from a last-minute cancellation due to weather or emergency. The insurance payout would save the family home and give everyone enough breathing room to start over. "But Jake said you wouldn't go along with it if you knew," Rachel continued. "He said you'd try to talk us out of it, or offer to pay for everything yourself, which would just make everyone feel worse. So he came up with a story about Madison and the fake Christmas location to keep you away while we handled the insurance claim." I felt sick as the pieces fell into place. My family had been so desperate that they'd convinced themselves fraud was their only option. And they'd manipulated me into being their unwitting accomplice. Rachel, whose idea was it to use my identity for all the bookings? She looked up at me with fresh tears in her eyes. "That wasn't part of the original plan. That was Kevin's suggestion. Kevin Walsh from my office. He's been helping us with the financial planning. Jake met him at a bar downtown and mentioned our family's situation. Kevin said he had experience with insurance claims and could help us maximize the payout." My blood went cold. Kevin Walsh was my supervisor at the marketing firm where I worked. He'd been unusually friendly lately, asking questions about my family and my personal finances. I'd assumed he was just being sociable, but now I realized he'd been gathering information. What exactly has Kevin been helping you plan? Rachel pulled out her laptop and showed me spreadsheets that made my head spin. Kevin had created detailed financial projections showing how the insurance fraud could generate nearly $100,000 in payouts across multiple claims. But the spreadsheets also showed something else that made my stomach drop. Kevin had been skimming money from our marketing firm's client accounts for months, using a complex system of fake invoices and redirected payments. The insurance fraud wasn't meant to help my family at all. It was designed to cover Kevin's tracks when his embezzlement was discovered. He said using your identity would make everything look more legitimate, Rachel whispered. Corporate executives book expensive retreats all the time. But if the event gets canceled and we file insurance claims, you'd just be an innocent victim of circumstances beyond your control. And when the investigation reveals that my own family members were the ones who booked everything, Kevin said that would make it look even more convincing. Like we were trying to give you a nice surprise, but everything went wrong. I stared at the laptop screen, realizing that Kevin had manipulated my desperate family into becoming accessories to a much larger crime. They thought they were committing insurance fraud to save their home. In reality, they were providing Kevin with the perfect cover story for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from our company. But there was something else in Rachel's spreadsheets that made me pause. The timeline showed that Kevin's embezzlement had been going on for almost a year, and according to the payment schedules, his final and largest theft was planned for tonight. Rachel, where exactly is this real family Christmas party happening? She looked confused by the question. At Dad's work. Kevin suggested having it there since the building would be empty and Dad has after-hours access. He said it would be more private and comfortable than someone's house. The credit union. Kevin had convinced my family to hold their Christmas party at the credit union where my father worked security. Tonight. While I was 500 miles away, dealing with a fake corporate event that would give Kevin the perfect alibi. I grabbed Rachel's phone and called Jake immediately. Jake listened to me very carefully. Do not let Kevin Walsh anywhere near the credit union computer systems tonight. What, Brenton, where are you? Kevin's been helping us set up the party all day. He's really good with technology stuff. Jake, Kevin is a criminal. He's been stealing money from my company and using our family as cover. Whatever he's planning to do tonight at Dad's work, it's not about helping us. The line went quiet except for background noise that sounded like people moving furniture and setting up decorations. You're being paranoid, Jake said finally. Kevin's been nothing but generous. He even paid for all the food and decorations for tonight. Said he wanted to help the family have a nice Christmas. He paid with stolen money, Jake. Money he took from the company where I work. When they investigate the theft, they're going to find evidence that leads straight back to our family party at the credit union. I could hear Jake talking to someone in the background, probably Kevin himself. When he came back on the line, his voice was strained. Kevin says you're upset about the lodge thing and trying to cause problems for everyone. He says people sometimes get paranoid when they're under stress. Jake, I need you to get Dad away from Kevin right now. Don't let Kevin have access to any computer systems or security codes. I can't do that, Brenton. Kevin's already helping Dad with some technical updates to the security system. Said it would make Dad's job easier. The call ended, and I realized with growing horror that Kevin was already inside the credit union with access to everything he needed to complete his heist. My family thought they were getting help from a generous friend. In reality, they were providing cover for a major theft that would destroy all of their lives. I looked at Rachel, who was staring at me with dawning comprehension of how badly they'd all been manipulated. We have to stop him, she whispered. Rachel's laptop contained far more incriminating evidence than I'd initially realized. As we dug deeper into Kevin's files, a sophisticated criminal operation began to emerge that went beyond simple embezzlement. Kevin had been running a complex money laundering scheme using multiple fake consulting companies, all designed to funnel stolen corporate funds through legitimate-looking business transactions. Mountain Peak Strategic Solutions, the company used to book the lodge event, was just one of a dozen shell companies Kevin had created. Each one had a different fake CEO, different business addresses, and different banking relationships. But they all followed the same pattern book: expensive corporate services pay with stolen funds, then cancel the events and collect insurance payouts or refunds. "Look at this," Rachel said, pointing to a spreadsheet labeled Active Projects. "Kevin's been running similar scams in 3 different states. He books corporate retreats, training seminars, and business conferences, then cancels them at the last minute with elaborate stories about emergencies or changed circumstances." The numbers were staggering. Kevin had stolen nearly $200,000 from our marketing firm alone, but the total across all his schemes exceeded $500,000. He'd been systematically targeting small to medium-sized businesses, where a single employee could fly under the radar for months. "But why involve our family?" I asked. Rachel pulled up another file that made my skin crawl. Kevin had detailed psychological profiles of each family member, including notes about our financial pressures, personality weaknesses, and relationship dynamics. He'd been studying us like lab rats, looking for ways to manipulate our desperation and family loyalty. "He needed real people with real financial problems," Rachel explained, reading from Kevin's notes. "Insurance companies are suspicious of convenient coincidences, but they're much less likely to investigate claims involving genuine family emergencies and documented financial hardship." Kevin's plan was diabolically clever. He'd use my identity to book legitimate events, knowing that my family's desperate circumstances would provide perfect cover when things went wrong. If investigators looked into the canceled retreat, they'd find a broke family trying to help each other and assume the whole thing was just bad luck combined with poor judgment. But the most chilling discovery came when Rachel opened a folder labeled Exit Strategy. Kevin had been planning this for over a year, carefully positioning himself for one final massive theft that would set him up for life. Tonight's credit union heist wasn't just about stealing money from the branch. It was about accessing the main computer network to transfer funds from multiple accounts across the entire credit union system. "He's not planning to steal thousands," I said, reading Kevin's detailed technical notes. "He's planning to steal millions." The credit union processed payments for over 50 small businesses throughout the Denver area. If Kevin could access the main servers during his window of opportunity, he could redirect electronic payments, transfer funds between accounts, and even manipulate the accounting records to hide his tracks. By the time anyone noticed the irregularities, he'd be long gone with enough money to disappear forever. "And our family Christmas party gives him the perfect cover," Rachel whispered. "Dad's security access gets him into the building legally. The party provides an excuse for why multiple people are there after hours. And if something goes wrong, we look like either accomplices or innocent dupes who were just trying to have a nice holiday celebration." I called my friend Marcus immediately. Marcus worked in cybersecurity for a major bank in downtown Denver, and if anyone could help me understand Kevin's technical capabilities, it would be him. "Brenton, where the hell are you?" Marcus answered. "I've been calling you all day about some weird activity on your credit report." "What kind of activity?" "Someone's been opening accounts using your social security number and employment information. 3 different banks, 2 credit card companies, and what looks like a business loan application. I flagged everything as potential identity theft and put alerts on your credit file." The pieces clicked into place. Kevin hadn't just been planning to frame me for his embezzlement. He'd been systematically stealing my identity to create the financial infrastructure needed for his money laundering operation. "Marcus, I need you to help me trace some electronic payments from a business account. Can you access banking records if I can provide account numbers?" "Not legally, but if this is about identity theft, I might be able to pull some strings." "What's going on?" I explained the situation as quickly as possible, while Rachel packed up her laptop and prepared to drive back to Denver with me. Marcus listened in growing amazement as I described Kevin's scheme. "This is way bigger than identity theft," Marcus said when I finished. If he's planning to hack into a credit union's main servers, we're talking about federal crimes that could send him away for decades. But we need concrete evidence of his intentions before law enforcement will take this seriously. What kind of evidence? Access logs, transaction records, anything that shows he's actually attempting to breach secure systems. The problem is that by the time we have that evidence, the crime will already be in progress. Rachel and I drove back toward Denver through the winding mountain roads, my mind racing as I tried to figure out how to stop Kevin without putting my family in danger. They still believed Kevin was helping them, which meant they'd resist any attempts to interfere with his plans. About halfway back to Denver, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text message from Jake. Having a great time at the party. Kevin set up some kind of computer system to help Dad with his security rounds. Really high-tech stuff. Thanks for setting all this up, sis. I pulled over at a truck stop and called Marcus back. Kevin's already accessing the credit union's computer systems, I told him. My family thinks he's helping them with security upgrades, but he's actually setting up his heist. How long until the banks reopen and someone notices unauthorized transactions? Sue. Assuming he waits until after the holiday weekend, he has at least 4 days to cover his tracks and disappear. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Brenton, I think your best option is to contact the FBI. Financial crimes on this scale fall under federal jurisdiction, and they have the resources to handle complex cybercrime investigations. But my family will be arrested as accomplices. Not necessarily. If we can prove they were manipulated and deceived, they might be treated as victims rather than conspirators. But you need to decide fast. The longer this goes on, the harder it will be to untangle their involvement from Kevin's crimes. I looked at Rachel, who was listening to our conversation with growing panic in her eyes. The choice was clear, but heartbreaking. I could try to protect my family by staying silent, which would make me complicit in Kevin's crimes, and probably destroy dozens of innocent families who banked at the credit union. Or I could do the right thing and risk sending my desperate relatives to federal prison. Marcus, I need you to put me in touch with the FBI, but first I want to try something that might save everyone. As we merged back onto the highway toward Denver, I started forming a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Instead of just stopping Kevin's crime, I was going to turn his own manipulation tactics against him. If Kevin wanted to use my family as unwitting accomplices, I'd give him exactly what he was expecting, while secretly working with law enforcement to catch him in the act. But first I had to convince the FBI that a marketing coordinator from Denver had uncovered a multi-state financial crime conspiracy in the middle of a Wyoming snowstorm on Christmas Eve. Marcus connected me with Special Agent Lisa Chen, who worked financial crimes for the FBI's Denver field office. I expected skepticism, but Agent Chen listened to my story with professional interest and asked detailed questions that suggested she was taking the threat seriously. We've been tracking unusual activity at several financial institutions across Colorado, she told me during our phone conference. Multiple businesses have reported discrepancies in their electronic payment processing, but we haven't been able to identify a pattern or common source. Your information might be exactly what we need to connect the pieces. Agent Chen agreed to meet me at the Pine Ridge Lodge, which would serve as a command center for the investigation. Patricia Wells turned out to be a former police detective who'd retired early after a line-of-duty injury, and she offered to help coordinate with federal agents who could blend in as lodge staff. The key is catching Kevin in the act without alerting him to our presence, Agent Chen explained as we reviewed Kevin's files on Rachel's laptop. If he realizes he's been discovered, he'll either abandon the operation or accelerate his timeline and potentially destroy evidence. The plan we developed required precise timing and careful acting on my part. I would return to Denver and rejoin my family's Christmas party, pretending I'd had a change of heart about Jake's prank. Agent Chen would position undercover agents throughout the area around the credit union disguised as holiday shoppers, delivery drivers, and maintenance workers. Rachel agreed to cooperate fully, wearing a concealed recording device to capture Kevin's admissions about the scheme. Her role was to act nervous about the lodge situation and push Kevin to reveal more details about his plans. The challenge is getting Kevin to incriminate himself while keeping your family members out of federal prison, Agent Chen said. We need evidence that shows they were victims of manipulation rather than willing conspirators. As we drove back toward Denver, Rachel coached me on family dynamics and recent conversations. Kevin had been cultivating relationships with each family member for months, offering financial advice and emotional support during their crisis. He'd positioned himself as their savior while carefully gathering information about their vulnerabilities. He knows exactly which buttons to push, Rachel warned me. Dad feels guilty about the gambling, so Kevin makes him feel useful by asking for his security expertise. Jake's unemployed and angry, so Kevin validates his resentment and makes him feel important. Mom's overwhelmed by medical bills, so Kevin offers hope for a solution. The family Christmas party was being held in the credit union's main conference room, which Kevin had claimed would be more comfortable than someone's cramped living room. In reality, the conference room was directly adjacent to the server room where the main computer systems were located. Kevin suggested the location because he said it would be easier for Dad to check on the building during his security rounds, Rachel explained. But Dad's normal rounds don't include the server room. Kevin's been slowly expanding Dad's access by claiming the security company wants more comprehensive monitoring. I practiced my cover story as we approached the Denver city limits. I would tell my family that I'd been upset about Jake's prank and driven around Wyoming for hours to cool off before realizing that family was more important than pride. The fake lodge event would be explained as a misunderstanding involving identity theft that I'd handle with my bank after the holidays. Agent Chen's voice came through my earpiece as I parked outside the credit union. Remember, your job is to keep Kevin distracted while we gather evidence. Don't try to be a hero. If Kevin becomes suspicious or aggressive, remove yourself from the situation immediately. The credit union building looked festive and innocent from the outside, decorated with Christmas lights and a cheerful holiday banner. Cars belonging to my family members filled the parking lot and warm light glowed from the conference room windows. It could have been any family's Christmas celebration, except for the federal agents positioning themselves around the building's perimeter. I took a deep breath and walked through the front entrance using Dad's security code that Rachel had provided. The sound of laughter and Christmas music drifted down the hallway from the conference room, and for a moment I almost forgot about the sophisticated criminal operation taking place behind the holiday facade. "Brenton," Sarah called out as I entered the room. "You made it. Jake said you might not come because of work stuff, but I knew you wouldn't miss Christmas." The scene looked completely normal. Mom was arranging food on a buffet table, Dad was adjusting the room's lighting, and various cousins and relatives were chatting around small tables decorated with red and green tablecloths. Kevin stood near the back of the room, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, looking like any other family friend helping with the party setup. "Hey there, stranger," Kevin said, approaching me with a friendly smile and a firm handshake. "Jake told me about your Wyoming adventure. Sorry that didn't work out, but these things happen. At least you're here now for the real celebration." I forced myself to smile back while studying Kevin's demeanor for any signs of suspicion. He seemed completely relaxed and confident, which suggested he still believed his plan was proceeding smoothly. "Yeah, it was just a misunderstanding with some travel booking," I said, sticking to my rehearsed explanation. "Probably identity theft or something. I'll sort it out after the holidays." Kevin's eyes flickered with interest, but his expression remained neutral. "That's a shame. Identity theft is such a hassle to deal with. I hope it doesn't cause you too much trouble with your credit or anything." The way he said it made my skin crawl. Kevin was fishing for information about whether I'd discovered his use of my personal details, and his casual tone suggested he felt completely safe from detection. Jake approached us carrying 2 beers and handed me one. "Glad you decided to join us, bro. Madison's here somewhere if you want to say hi. Turns out she really was asking about you at that barbecue." I scanned the room and spotted a woman with dark blonde hair talking to my cousin near the refreshment table. Madison looked familiar from Jake's summer party, and she seemed genuinely pleased to see me when our eyes met across the room. "Actually, I want to apologize for that whole Wyoming thing," Jake continued, lowering his voice. Kevin helped me realize it was a pretty immature way to handle the situation. I should have just told you straight up that I was interested in Madison and asked you to back off. Kevin helped you realize that. Jake nodded toward Kevin, who was now helping Dad connect some kind of electronic device to the conference room's computer terminal. He's good at seeing things from different perspectives. Really helped our family think through some tough financial decisions lately. I watched Kevin work with the computer equipment, noting how comfortable he seemed with the credit union systems. Dad stood beside him asking questions, but Kevin was clearly the one directing the technical setup. Rachel caught my eye from across the room and nodded slightly, indicating that her recording device was active and functioning. Agent Chen's voice whispered in my earpiece, "We're picking up the audio feed clearly. Keep Kevin talking about his technical work." I walked over to where Kevin and Dad were working, keeping my expression curious rather than suspicious. "What kind of setup are you installing here?" I asked. Kevin looked up with enthusiasm, clearly proud of his technical skills. "Just helping your dad streamline his security monitoring. The credit union system is pretty outdated, so I'm showing him how to access real-time data feeds that will make his rounds more efficient." Dad beamed with pride. "Kevin knows all about modern security technology. He's been teaching me things they never covered in our training program." What I was watching wasn't security training at all. Kevin had installed monitoring software that was capturing user passwords and account access codes in real time. Every time an employee logged into the credit union system, Kevin's program recorded their credentials for later use. "That's impressive," I said to Kevin. "You must have a background in cybersecurity." "Oh, just a hobby, really," Kevin replied modestly. "I've always been good with computers, and I like helping people solve technical problems. Your family's been so welcoming to me, I wanted to give something back." Agent Chen's voice crackled in my earpiece. "We're recording everything. Keep him talking about his computer access." But before I could ask another question, Kevin's phone buzzed with an urgent text message. He read it quickly, and I saw his expression change from relaxed confidence to sharp alertness. "Everything okay?" I asked. Kevin forced a smile, but his eyes had gone cold and calculating. "Just work stuff. Sometimes emergencies come up even during the holidays." He turned to Dad with renewed urgency. "Mr. Harrison, I think we should finish setting up that backup monitoring system tonight. The security company wants it operational before the holiday weekend ends." Dad looked confused. "I thought you said we could wait until after Christmas to complete the installation." "Plans change." Kevin said, his voice taking on an edge of authority that hadn't been there before. "It's important that we finish everything tonight while I'm here to help troubleshoot any problems." I realized with growing alarm that something had spooked Kevin. Either one of the federal agents had been spotted, or Kevin had received information that made him want to accelerate his timeline. Whatever had changed, Kevin was now moving toward the completion of his heist much faster than anyone had anticipated. Rachel appeared at my elbow, her face pale with concern. "Brenton, can I talk to you privately for a minute?" We stepped into the hallway outside the conference room where Rachel whispered urgently, "I just overheard Kevin talking to someone on his phone. He said the Wyoming situation had been compromised and that he needed to advance the timeline for extraction." My blood went cold. Kevin somehow knew that his lodge scheme had been discovered, which meant he also knew that I wasn't just an innocent victim of his prank anymore. Agent Chen's voice came through my earpiece with new urgency. "Brenton, we've detected unauthorized access attempts on the credit union's main servers. Kevin's accelerating his operation. You need to get your family out of that building immediately." But as Rachel and I headed back toward the conference room, we heard the electronic sound of doors locking throughout the building. Kevin's voice called out cheerfully to the party guests, "Sorry everyone, but I just activated the building's security lockdown system. Nobody can leave until tomorrow morning for insurance reasons. But don't worry, we have plenty of food and drinks to keep us comfortable." I looked at Rachel in horror as I realized Kevin had just taken my entire family hostage. The electronic locks clicking into place throughout the building sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the winter weather outside. Kevin had transformed what looked like a friendly family gathering into a carefully orchestrated hostage situation, and my relatives were still laughing and chatting as if nothing had changed. "The lockdown is just a precaution," Kevin announced to the room with practiced calm. "Insurance companies require enhanced security protocols during after-hours events at financial institutions. We'll be much more comfortable staying put until morning, rather than dealing with alarm systems and security company protocols." Dad nodded approvingly, trusting Kevin's expertise completely. "Makes sense. Better safe than sorry when it comes to the credit union's security requirements." Agent Chen's voice crackled urgently in my earpiece. "The building's main communication systems have been disabled. Kevin's jamming cell phone signals and landline connections. We're coordinating with SWAT teams, but we need you to keep everyone calm while we establish entry points." I glanced around the conference room, counting family members and trying to assess the situation. 15 people total, including 3 children under 10 years old. Most of my relatives looked relaxed and unconcerned, trusting Kevin's explanation about security protocols. Only Rachel and I knew the true nature of our predicament. Kevin was no longer pretending to be a helpful family friend. He moved with focused efficiency between different computer terminals, his fingers flying across keyboards as he accessed increasingly sensitive parts of the credit union's network. Every few minutes he glanced up to ensure that family members weren't paying too much attention to his activities. "Uncle Gary, could you help me move this equipment closer to the server room?" Kevin asked my uncle, who managed the financial services firm where Rachel worked. "I need better access to the main network connections." Uncle Gary started to comply, but I interceded quickly. "Actually, Kevin, maybe I could help with that instead. Gary's been having back problems lately." Kevin's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw a flash of suspicion cross his face. "That's thoughtful, Brenton, but Gary knows more about financial network systems. His expertise will be helpful for the technical setup." The exchange felt like a chess match, with Kevin testing whether I understood the real situation while trying to maintain his cover story for the rest of the family. I needed to play along without arousing his suspicions, but I also couldn't let him isolate family members or gain additional access to critical systems. "Sure thing," I said with forced casualness. "I just thought you might want to take a break from all the computer work and enjoy the party." Madison approached our conversation with genuine concern. "Is everything okay? You all look pretty serious for a Christmas celebration." Kevin immediately shifted back into his charming persona. "Just boring technical stuff. I'm helping Mr. Harrison upgrade some security systems while we have the time. Nothing for anyone to worry about." But Madison's presence reminded me of something important. She worked as a nurse at Denver General Hospital, which meant she had training in crisis management and emergency communication protocols. If I could find a way to signal her without alerting Kevin, she might be able to help coordinate with the family members who weren't aware of the danger. I caught Madison's eye and subtly gestured toward the children playing near the Christmas tree in the corner of the room. "Madison, maybe you could organize some kind of game or activity to keep the kids entertained while the adults handle this technical stuff." She nodded, understanding immediately, recognizing the subtext of my request. "Great idea. Kids can get restless during long adult conversations." As Madison moved toward the children, I noticed that Kevin was watching our interaction with increased attention. His casual demeanor was slipping, replaced by the sharp focus of someone managing multiple variables in a high-stakes operation. Rachel positioned herself near the refreshment table, where she could observe both Kevin's computer work and the family members scattered around the room. The recording device hidden in her clothing was still active, capturing evidence of Kevin's increasingly criminal behavior. Kevin's phone buzzed again, and this time he made no effort to hide his irritation when reading the message. He walked to the far corner of the room and made a brief phone call, speaking in low tones that suggested he was coordinating with accomplices outside the building. When he returned, his expression had hardened into something colder and more dangerous than anything I'd seen from him before. "I need to make an announcement to everyone," Kevin said, raising his voice to address the entire room. There's been a change in our security situation that requires some additional precautions. The casual party atmosphere began to shift as family members noticed Kevin's serious tone and authoritative posture. Dad looked confused. Mom appeared concerned, and several relatives stopped their conversations to pay attention. "What kind of change?" Uncle Gary asked. Kevin pulled out a small device that looked like a remote control and held it up for everyone to see. "This building is now under enhanced security protocols due to some unusual activity detected in the area. For everyone's safety, I'm implementing full lockdown procedures until morning." Jake stood up from his chair with growing alarm. "Kevin, what's going on? This sounds more serious than insurance requirements." "It is more serious," Kevin replied calmly. "But as long as everyone stays calm and follows instructions, we'll all be perfectly safe." The room went silent except for the soft Christmas music still playing from the sound system. Family members looked at each other with confusion and mounting fear as they began to understand that something was very wrong. Agent Chen's voice whispered in my earpiece, "Kevin's device appears to be a detonator. We're detecting possible explosive devices in the building. Do not attempt to challenge him directly. Keep everyone calm while we assess the situation." My heart nearly stopped as I realized Kevin had been planning for this contingency all along. The explosive devices explained why he was confident about controlling the situation and why he'd chosen the credit union building for tonight's gathering. If anyone tried to interfere with his operation, he could threaten to destroy the building with my entire family inside. "Kevin," I said carefully, "maybe you could explain exactly what these security protocols involve. People are starting to get worried about their children." Kevin's smile was cold and calculating. "The protocols are simple, Brenton. Everyone stays in this room while I complete some important work in the server room next door. Nobody tries to leave, nobody tries to communicate with anyone outside the building, and nobody interferes with my activities. As long as those rules are followed, everyone goes home safely tomorrow morning." "And if someone breaks the rules?" Uncle Gary asked quietly. Kevin held up the detonator again. "Then this turns from a family Christmas party into a tragedy that nobody wants to experience." The children had stopped playing and were now clinging to their parents, sensing the adult tension even if they didn't understand the specifics of the threat. Madison quietly organized the kids into a small group near the Christmas tree, using her medical training to keep them calm and distracted. Rachel caught my attention and mouthed silently, "Still recording." Everything Kevin said was being captured as evidence, but that wouldn't help us if he decided to follow through on his threat to destroy the building. I needed to find a way to neutralize the explosive threat while giving federal agents time to coordinate their response. Kevin moved toward the door that connected the conference room to the server room, then paused to address the room one final time. "I'll be working next door for the next few hours. Rachel will stay here to help coordinate with anyone who has questions or needs. But remember, any attempt to leave this room or contact the outside world will have immediate and permanent consequences for everyone." He disappeared into the server room, leaving my family trapped with Rachel as his designated monitor. The weight of the situation settled over the room like a heavy blanket, and I realized that the next few hours would determine whether my attempt to stop Kevin's crimes would save my family or destroy them. Through the conference room windows, I could see subtle signs of law enforcement positioning around the building's perimeter. Agent Chen and her team were out there working to resolve the situation, but they were operating blind without clear knowledge of Kevin's capabilities or the extent of the explosive threat. I looked around the room at the faces of people I'd known and loved my entire life, all of them now in mortal danger because of choices and circumstances that had spiraled completely out of control. The responsibility for their safety weighed on me like a physical force, and I knew that whatever happened next would define the rest of my life. Kevin's voice drifted through the closed door as he began his work in the server room, and I realized that our ordeal was just beginning. The next 2 hours passed with excruciating tension as Kevin worked methodically in the server room while my family sat trapped in the adjacent conference room. The children dozed fitfully in their parents' arms, and the adults spoke in whispers when they spoke at all. Everyone understood that we were hostages, but nobody except Rachel and I knew the full scope of Kevin's criminal operation. Agent Chen's voice provided periodic updates through my earpiece. Kevin's accessing multiple financial accounts across the credit union's network. We estimate he's already transferred over $2 million to offshore accounts. SWAT teams are in position, but we can't move until we neutralize the explosive threat. Rachel had positioned herself near the door to monitor Kevin's activities while maintaining her cover as his reluctant accomplice. Every 20 minutes or so, Kevin would emerge to check on the family and ensure that nobody was attempting to communicate with the outside world. During these brief appearances, he maintained his calm demeanor, but couldn't hide the intensity of his focus on completing his theft. "How much longer do you think this will take?" Mom asked during one of Kevin's visits to the conference room. "Should be finished before dawn," Kevin replied, checking his watch. "The enhanced security protocols require very thorough documentation, but we're making good progress." Dad nodded approvingly, still believing Kevin's cover story about security upgrades. The trust in his eyes was heartbreaking, considering that Kevin was using Dad's access codes and security clearance to commit federal crimes. After Kevin returned to the server room, Madison quietly approached me while pretending to organize Christmas decorations near the windows. "Brenton, I can see movement outside the building," she whispered. "There are people positioned around the parking lot who definitely aren't credit union employees. What's really happening here?" I glanced around to ensure that other family members weren't listening, then leaned closer to Madison. "Kevin's not upgrading security systems. He's stealing millions of dollars from the credit union's accounts and using our family as cover for the theft." Madison's nursing training kicked in immediately. "Are we in physical danger?" "He has explosive devices. If law enforcement tries to breach the building, or if anyone interferes with his operation, he's threatened to detonate them." Madison's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. "What can we do to help?" Before I could answer, Kevin's voice called out from the server room. "Brenton, could you come here for a minute? I need your input on something." My stomach dropped. Kevin had been avoiding direct interaction with me for hours, which suggested that summoning me now meant something significant had changed in his operation. Agent Chen's voice crackled urgently in my earpiece. "Be extremely cautious. Kevin may have discovered our surveillance or identified you as a threat to his plans." I walked slowly toward the server room, my mind racing through possible scenarios. Kevin could have detected the FBI's monitoring equipment, realized that Rachel was recording our conversations, or simply decided that I knew too much to be allowed to survive. The server room was smaller than I'd expected, filled with humming computer equipment and multiple monitors displaying scrolling data from Kevin's hacking activities. Kevin stood with his back to the door, his fingers flying across a keyboard as he executed what appeared to be the final stages of his theft. "Close the door behind you," Kevin said without turning around. I complied while scanning the room for potential weapons or escape routes. Kevin had positioned himself between me and the only exit, and I could see the detonator device sitting within easy reach on the desk beside his computer. "You know, Brenton, I've been thinking about our conversation earlier tonight," Kevin said, finally turning to face me. His expression was cold and calculating, completely different from the friendly demeanor he'd maintained around my family. "You seemed awfully calm about that identity theft situation in Wyoming. Most people would be more upset about having their credit card used for a $47,000 event they didn't authorize." I forced my voice to remain steady. "I figured it was just a mistake that could be sorted out with the bank. These things happen." Kevin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "These things do happen, but usually not to people whose families are simultaneously hosting Christmas parties at the exact financial institution where the real crime is taking place." My heart pounded as I realized Kevin had figured out the connection between the lodge event and tonight's credit union operation. He knew that I'd discovered his scheme and was probably working with law enforcement to stop him. "I don't know what you're suggesting," I said, maintaining my innocent facade. "I'm suggesting that you're not nearly as stupid as I hoped you were," Kevin replied. He picked up the detonator and held it casually in his right hand. I'm also suggesting that your cousin Rachel has been very chatty tonight. Did you know that recording devices emit a distinctive electronic signature that shows up on security monitoring equipment? My blood went cold. Kevin had detected Rachel's wire and knew that our conversations were being recorded as evidence. The question now, Kevin continued, is how much damage you've managed to do to my operation, and whether it's worth the risk of letting you and your family leave here alive. Agent Chen's voice whispered in my earpiece. Kevin's completed the main transfers. He's preparing to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence. We're moving to breach the building. But Kevin apparently heard something in my expression that told him about my communication with law enforcement. Let me guess, he said with mock curiosity. The FBI is listening to this conversation right now through some kind of surveillance device, and they're probably positioning SWAT teams around the building as we speak. Kevin walked to one of the computer monitors and pulled up what appeared to be a security camera feed showing the parking lot around the credit union building. Federal agents were clearly visible in tactical positions, confirming Kevin's suspicions about law enforcement involvement. Here's what's going to happen. Brenton, Kevin said with deadly calm, you're going to walk back into that conference room and tell your family that there's been a change of plans. We're all going to move to a more secure location where I can complete my work without interference. Where? Kevin gestured to another monitor showing building schematics. Stay. The credit union's main vault is designed to withstand explosives and maintain structural integrity during emergencies. It will provide excellent protection for your family while I finish transferring funds and prepare for departure. I realized with horror that Kevin was planning to lock my family in the vault while he completed his escape. If anything went wrong with his plan, 15 people, including 3 children, would be trapped in an airtight space with no possibility of rescue. Kevin, there has to be another way to handle this, I said desperately. There was another way, Kevin replied. Your family could have played their parts in the insurance fraud like they were supposed to, taken their money and never known about the larger operation. But you had to be a hero and involve law enforcement. Kevin's phone buzzed with an urgent message. He read it quickly, and his expression shifted from cold calculation to barely controlled panic. It seems your FBI friends have identified my offshore accounts and frozen my assets, Kevin said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. 20 months of careful planning, and you've managed to destroy everything in one night. He looked at the detonator in his hand, then at the computer monitors showing his failed theft operation, and I saw him make a decision that chilled me to the bone. If I can't have the money, then at least I can make sure everyone who ruined my plans pays the price. Kevin raised the detonator, and I realized he was about to murder my entire family out of pure vindictive rage. Without thinking, I lunged forward and tackled Kevin around the waist, driving him backward into the computer equipment. The detonator flew from his hand and skittered across the floor as we crashed into the server racks. Kevin was stronger than I'd expected, and we wrestled desperately among the humming computers while alarms began blaring throughout the building. He managed to break free and scrambled toward the detonator, but I grabbed his ankle and pulled him back. You destroyed everything, Kevin screamed, his composure completely gone. $20 million, my entire future. We rolled across the floor, each trying to reach the detonator first. Kevin got his hands on it and raised it over his head, but I managed to grab his wrist and slam his hand against the concrete floor until his grip loosened. The detonator slid under a server rack just as the server room door exploded inward, and federal agents flooded into the room with weapons drawn. Nobody move, Agent Chen shouted, training her weapon on both Kevin and me. Kevin raised his hands in surrender while gasping for breath. The detonator's under the server rack. I don't know if it was damaged in the fight. Agent Chen directed her team to secure Kevin while bomb disposal experts entered to locate and neutralize the explosive devices. The conference room door burst open as additional agents evacuated my family to safety outside the building. As Kevin was led away in handcuffs, he turned back to me with pure hatred in his eyes. This isn't over, Brenton. You have no idea how many people you've made enemies of tonight. Agent Chen placed a protective hand on my shoulder. Actually, Kevin, this is very much over. We've recovered all the stolen funds, documented your entire operation, and identified your accomplices in 3 states. The only thing left is your sentencing hearing. As we were escorted out of the building, I saw my family gathered in the parking lot, wrapped in blankets and being checked by paramedics. They were alive, safe, and finally beginning to understand how close they'd come to disaster. But Kevin's final threat echoed in my mind as I realized that stopping his crime might have been just the beginning of my problems. The FBI investigation that followed Kevin's arrest revealed the true scope of his criminal enterprise and vindicated my family's role as unwitting victims rather than willing accomplices. Agent Chen's team traced Kevin's activities across 5 states, uncovering a network of shell companies, forged documents, and stolen identities that had enabled him to steal over $3 million from dozens of small businesses and individuals. The bomb disposal team found 4 explosive devices hidden throughout the credit union building, each powerful enough to cause significant structural damage and loss of life. Kevin had planted them weeks earlier during his supposed security consultations with Dad, using his trusted relationship with our family to gain access to the building's infrastructure. Kevin's psychological profile indicates a classic narcissistic sociopath with advanced manipulation skills, Agent Chen explained during one of our debriefing sessions. He targeted your family specifically because of your financial vulnerability and strong emotional bonds. He knew desperate people would be willing to bend rules to help each other, and he exploited that loyalty ruthlessly. The evidence Rachel's recording device had captured proved invaluable in prosecuting not only Kevin, but also his accomplices in other states. Her cooperation with the investigation earned her immunity from prosecution, and the FBI commended her courage in wearing the wire despite obvious personal danger. Dad took Kevin's betrayal particularly hard, blaming himself for providing access to the credit union and trusting someone who had seemed so helpful and knowledgeable. He entered counseling for his gambling addiction and worked with credit union management to implement enhanced security protocols that would prevent similar infiltrations in the future. I should have known something was wrong, Dad said during one of our family conversations after the dust had settled. Kevin knew too much about our systems and asked too many detailed questions about our procedures, but he made me feel important and competent, like my experience was valuable to someone. Mom's diabetes treatment became more manageable when the FBI's asset forfeiture from Kevin's accounts provided restitution funds for victims of his schemes. Our family received enough money to avoid foreclosure on their house and establish a modest emergency fund for future medical expenses. Jake struggled with guilt over his role in initiating the Christmas deception that had led to Kevin's manipulation of our family. He enrolled in job training programs and eventually found steady employment as a maintenance supervisor for a local school district. His relationship with Madison developed gradually after she witnessed his genuine remorse and commitment to personal growth. I keep thinking about how close we came to losing everyone, Jake told me months later. All because I was jealous and petty about someone I barely knew. Kevin used my worst impulses against the people I love most. Sarah's divorce proceedings became less financially devastating when her ex-husband's restaurant debt was restructured through bankruptcy court. She found new confidence in her ability to provide for her children independently and returned to school to complete her nursing degree. The most surprising development came from Patricia Wells at Pine Ridge Lodge. The FBI's investigation had generated significant media attention, and Patricia's background as a former police detective made her story compelling to corporate clients looking for unique team-building experiences. Companies want authentic leadership training that goes beyond typical corporate retreats, Patricia explained when she offered me a partnership in her expanding business. What happened to your family demonstrates real-world lessons about trust manipulation and crisis management that executives need to understand. Together, we developed a specialized program called Trust Under Fire that used realistic scenarios to help business teams identify and resist sophisticated manipulation tactics. The program became popular with financial institutions, government agencies, and corporations dealing with cybersecurity threats. Madison and I grew closer during the months following the crisis, bonding over our shared experience of Kevin's deception and our commitment to helping my family heal from the trauma. Her medical background proved invaluable in understanding the psychological impact of manipulation and betrayal on different family members. "You saved everyone that night," she told me during one of our evening conversations at the lodge. But more than that, you showed them how to trust again after being violated by someone who seemed trustworthy. Kevin was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for financial crimes, identity theft, terrorism charges related to the explosive devices, and conspiracy to commit murder. His accomplices in other states received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years, effectively dismantling the entire criminal network. The credit union where Dad worked promoted him to chief security officer after his experience with Kevin's infiltration helped them identify vulnerabilities in their existing protocols. Dad's new role involved consulting with other financial institutions about insider threat prevention and employee background verification. Rachel found new purpose in using her accounting skills to help fraud victims recover from financial crimes. She joined a nonprofit organization that provided pro bono financial counseling and worked directly with the FBI's Victim Services Division to assist in complex restitution cases. "Kevin taught me how easy it is to manipulate financial records and documents," Rachel said during one of our quarterly family dinners at the lodge. "Now, I use that knowledge to help investigators trace stolen assets and rebuild victims' financial security." The most meaningful outcome of our ordeal was how it strengthened our family's relationships and communication patterns. The crisis had forced us to confront long-standing issues about money, trust, and emotional support that we'd been avoiding for years. Uncle Gary restructured his financial services firm to include fraud prevention training for employees and clients. His experience with Kevin's manipulation of family relationships became a case study in professional boundary setting and conflict of interest identification. Kevin succeeded because he identified our individual weaknesses and used them against our collective strength, Uncle Gary reflected. Now we talk openly about financial pressures and emotional vulnerabilities instead of hiding them and hoping they'll resolve themselves. As I stood in the Pine Ridge Lodge's main conference room 1 year later, preparing to host our family's make-up Christmas celebration, I reflected on how profoundly our lives had changed. The room was decorated with genuine warmth and joy, filled with relatives who had learned to trust each other again after surviving Kevin's systematic betrayal. The children played safely near a beautiful Christmas tree, while adults shared stories and laughter around tables laden with food that had been purchased honestly and enjoyed without fear. Dad monitored the lodge's security systems with professional competence. Mom managed her diabetes with confidence and adequate resources, and Jake entertained Madison with stories that showcased his matured perspective on relationships and responsibility. Rachel coordinated the evening's activities with the organizational skills she now used to help crime victims, while Sarah supervised her children with the quiet strength of someone who had survived financial devastation and emerged stronger. Uncle Gary discussed business ethics with other relatives who had gained new appreciation for the importance of transparency and accountability in family relationships. Agent Chen joined us for dinner, having become something of an honorary family member through our shared experience of Kevin's investigation. Her presence reminded us of how law enforcement professionals risk their safety to protect innocent people from sophisticated criminals who exploit trust and vulnerability. Patricia moved through the celebration with the grace of someone who had found new purpose in helping others learn from crisis and adversity. Her lodge had become a symbol of transformation and healing rather than the site of deception and betrayal Kevin had intended. As the evening wound down and family members prepared to return to their respective homes, I gathered everyone in a circle for our traditional Christmas blessing. But instead of the usual gratitude for health and prosperity, I found myself reflecting on deeper lessons about human nature and moral courage. This year taught us that families can survive almost anything if they're willing to face truth together, I said, looking around the circle at faces that showed both the scars and wisdom that come from surviving betrayal. Kevin tried to destroy us by using our love for each other against us, but ultimately that same love became our greatest strength when we chose honesty over comfortable lies. Madison squeezed my hand as I continued. We learned that trust isn't about blind faith in people who seem helpful or charming. Real trust is about knowing that we can depend on each other to choose what's right, even when it's difficult or painful. The year that followed brought continued healing and growth for everyone touched by Kevin's crimes. The Trust Under Fire program at Pine Ridge Lodge trained hundreds of executives and law enforcement professionals in recognizing and resisting sophisticated manipulation tactics. Several companies credited the training with preventing significant financial crimes and protecting their employees from internal threats. My relationship with Madison deepened into genuine partnership, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than the superficial attraction Kevin had tried to exploit. We married the following Christmas at Pine Ridge Lodge, surrounded by family members who had learned to celebrate authentic connection and hard-won wisdom. Dad's work in security consultation helped dozens of financial institutions strengthen their defenses against insider threats and social engineering attacks. His experience with Kevin's manipulation became a valuable case study in training programs across the banking industry. Mom's health stabilized with proper medical care and reduced stress about family finances. She became an advocate for other families dealing with gambling addiction, using her experience to help spouses and children understand the complex dynamics of financial betrayal and recovery. Jake and Madison's relationship blossomed as they both demonstrated genuine personal growth and commitment to honest communication. Jake's steady employment and mature approach to conflict resolution showed Madison that people could learn from their mistakes and become better partners through adversity. Sarah completed her nursing degree and found fulfilling work helping other single mothers navigate financial and legal challenges following divorce. Her children thrived in the stable environment she created through determination and support from extended family who had learned to communicate openly about difficulties. Rachel's nonprofit work evolved into a consulting business that helped small companies implement fraud prevention protocols and employee background verification systems. Her unique perspective as both a former victim and a reformed accomplice gave her credibility with clients who needed to understand how financial crimes develop and spread. The final chapter of Kevin's story came when he was attacked in federal prison by other inmates who learned about his crimes against children and families. He survived but suffered permanent injuries that ensured his remaining years would be marked by both physical limitation and social isolation. Justice isn't always pretty or satisfying, Agent Chen told me when I learned about Kevin's attack. But sometimes consequences catch up with people in ways that formal legal proceedings can't address. As I reflect on everything that happened during those transformative days between Christmas and New Year's, I'm struck by how deception and manipulation can be overcome by ordinary people who choose courage over comfort and truth over convenience. Kevin believed he could succeed because he understood human weakness and exploited people's natural desire to help their families during times of crisis. What he failed to understand was that the same bonds he tried to corrupt could become sources of extraordinary strength when people committed themselves to protecting each other through honesty and sacrifice. The most important lesson from our experience is that trust once broken by betrayal can be rebuilt stronger than before if people are willing to do the hard work of examining their own vulnerabilities and supporting each other through the painful process of growth. Now, as I watch Madison coordinate activities at our thriving lodge business and see my family members gathered around tables sharing stories and laughter, I understand that surviving Kevin's manipulation wasn't just about stopping a criminal. It was about discovering that love, when tested by genuine adversity, can transform ordinary people into protectors of everything that matters most in human relationships. The question I ask myself and everyone who hears this story is, when faced with deception that threatens the people you love most, will you have the courage to choose truth over comfort, action over paralysis, and protection of others over protection of yourself? Because in those moments of moral testing, we discover not just who we really are, but who we have the potential to become. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that even in our darkest moments, when trust seems impossible and betrayal feels overwhelming, there are always choices available that can lead toward healing justice and stronger connections with the people who matter most. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with trust and betrayal in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between comfort and truth in a family crisis? How did you find the courage to do the right thing when the stakes were highest? Please like this video if it moved you, subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding how manipulation works and how it can be overcome through courage and genuine love. Remember, the strongest families aren't the ones who never face deception or betrayal. They're the ones who choose to face those challenges together with honesty, courage, and unwavering commitment to protecting each other no matter what the cost.